and welcome to this Pastors in Transition webinar. This is a new way of doing things, let me tell you, a brand new way. In fact, I have made some notes about this webinar. It is reshaped, reconfigured, and reformatted. It is shorter, technologically enabled, and COVID focused. Transitions are transitions, but this is unlike any transition you have ever seen. So what I'm not sure of yet is if I've gone live yet or not. And I need some help because I'm just kind of out here on a limb. Help me, please, Jacob.
Yes, you are indeed live.
Thank you. Well, then why don't we show my face back, okay?
Okay.
So I can talk to the people. So we do welcome you. One of the things about webinars that we were just talking about is that at the end, we will have a whole set of bloopers that we can share. Transitions are transitions, but this is unlike any transition ever. And it seems to me that a passage from Scripture is very appropriate for this. It comes from Genesis, the 12th chapter, and listen to God's word. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you." So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran. And they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. I sometimes think that passage could be the theme passage for United Methodist pastors who live under an itinerant system. You are told where to go. You don't know much about it. You often don't know what you're going to be walking into, but you go faithfully. This year, however, everything about this Abram transition is more complex and more complicated, or as I like to say, more complexicated. And today, I want you to know that I'm so grateful for you. The cabinet is so grateful for you. And we're going to do our best in this shortened time frame to give you some resources and to help prepare you for transition in the COVID era. Would you pray with me, please? Lord God, we are grateful beyond words for your grace and your gift of Jesus Christ, who brings us salvation, reconciliation with you, healing, transformation, new life, and hope. I pray for these pastors who are in transition, for the congregations they are leaving, for the congregations and mission fields they are going to, that in this most unusual season when everything is turned upside down, they will know your presence, they will have hope that is abiding, and as they move into the unknown, they will do so with a sense of adventure. Bless them, Lord, and their families. And in this time of anxiety and stress, may the presence of the Holy Spirit calm them, energize them, give them vision, and lead them in the direction that you would have them go. And we pray this in the strong, strong name of Jesus. Amen. We are undertaking this journey In an era that has been turned upside down, life like we have never known it, COVID-19. I want to give you a couple of updates about that. First, my best sense of where we are in dealing with the pandemic. In many ways, things are improving. Overall, in many areas, case rate is going down, hospitalizations are going down, but not everywhere. And even over the past few days in Arkansas, the rate has gone back up. And so we're in this very tender time. Will people continue to social distance, wear masks, engage in safe behaviors? Or will they say, I am so tired of being trapped, I'm going to go out and it's not worth it? And the decisions we make as individuals and the decisions institutions make and the government makes will have a lot to do with whether there's a spike, a resurgence, or just what happens with COVID. COVID has touched everyone I've talked to. Everyone knows someone who has been infected by it. And of course, this week, those of us who are clergy grieve Norm Moyer's death as he succumbed to COVID complications. It is a time in which we don't know what it will be like the 1st of July when you arrive at your new appointment. We don't know what it will be like in the community you're moving to. And so what I would like to say to you is act with caution and wisdom. Take good care of yourself and be safe. And together, and with God's help, we will get through this. There's an article by Andy Crouch, Kurt Keilhacker, and Dave Blanchard called Beyond the Blizzard: Why Every Organization is Now a Startup. And in that article, which was written in March, they ask a very probing question. Is COVID-19 a snowstorm, a blizzard, winter, or the beginning of a new ice age? We don't know the answer to that yet. And so I would urge you to go look for that article and also Strategies for Winter. And we'll get links up to these on the page. And it's entitled Strategies for Winter, Redemptive Leadership in Survival Times. And just call your attention to those. Those are very helpful. So what will COVID-19 impact? Everything. It already has. It's going to impact your leaving, your grieving, your moving, physically, you're getting settled in, you're getting to know people, what your next year will be like, your how you plan for your leading and what you're going to do, your expectations, everything. Some of you will be moving into places where many, many people have been impacted by COVID. And you're going to have pastoral responsibilities right away. Others of you are going to go into situations where it has been little impacted. But here's what I know. 36 million people have filed for unemployment. 36 million. And you can bet they're far more than that. And so you're walking into a world where people are both leery of getting back together and yet longing to, where you have some very vulnerable at-risk people in your congregation, where there may be financial challenges. It may be a while in some places till they want to get back together for corporate worship, and on and on and on. Any issue you deal with in transitioning has many more levels now than it ever has before. You will not be fully able to say goodbye to the congregation or place of ministry you're leaving right now. That's hard. Your family is grieving and unable to do much about that because they too cannot say goodbye. You'll be arriving ready to hit the ground, getting to know people, and yet you'll have to do that in different kinds of ways. You may find yourself struggling immediately with financial questions or figuring out how you can get the PPP loan forgiven. There's a lot on your plate. And so what I want you to just keep reminding yourself, what's going to be impacted by COVID? Everything. And so in the same way you treat others with grace, treat yourself with grace as well. You are learning as you go along. You are figuring this out as we all are figuring this out. And I will be in prayer for you. I want to give you an overview of what we're going to do today. And Jacob, if you could put up that slide, that would be very helpful. Let's go on to the next one, the overview. There we go. As you can see, we are beginning with this time, and I need to go back one more. There we go. And then want to just highlight the major components of this. We are going to have a section in which we focus on saying goodbye. A video about taking care of yourself in the transition, some resources, and then we'll have a break. And we will go into groups kind of by affinity nature. It'll be an interactive, we're going to have small groups and get people together who are in like situations talking. And we'll do that. And then we're going to have come back together at the end to harvest our learnings and for a closing blessing. As all of you know, there's a chat section available, and you can either send a message just to the panelists or to everyone. I suspect you all have that down in your sleep by now. And so I invite you to put any questions up there, any comments, even some prayer requests. You are Abram. You are on a journey. And God has called you to that journey, and God will be with you on that journey. And I know that God has something very special for you to do on that journey. So God bless you. I'll be back with you later. We have some wonderful, wonderful presentations coming up, and we're going to get on with it right now.
Good morning. I'm next. Greetings from the Northeast District. I'm John Fleming, the Superintendent and Chief Mission Strategist here. In the next section of the presentation, we're going to be talking, Ann Ferris and I, she'll follow me, on ways of saying goodbye. It's always hard to do, to say goodbye to a church that you've loved and served. I've said goodbye 5 times in 5 different congregations, and it's always difficult. It's especially difficult in this season where physical distancing is part of the nature of our world. So when we do say goodbye, we're doing about 5 things. One is we're giving thanks for what the church has done for us, how they provided us, in many cases, lasting friendships and a place to call home. The last place was the place where one of my daughters spent all of her high school years from 7th to 12th grade and graduated last year before we moved here to Batesville. I always want to also say, to ask for forgiveness in a time of of saying goodbye, for the mistakes that I know that I made. And I just ask people to forgive those mistakes and to help me know that forgiveness is possible. So that's important. A third thing that we do when we say goodbye is that we offer prayers, and we hand over the life of the church to the members again. They've had it all along, but we offer our prayers for a good transition. A fourth thing that we do is that we extend a blessing. We ask God to bless the church, and as we begin to exit that particular congregation, or in some cases congregations or ministry settings, we just ask to God bless the future as he has in the past. And finally, we also want to show great support for whoever is following us in the ministry. And so that is something that we for sure want to do, is to show support for our successor, build them up and let them know. And those are the things that we want to do in a time of saying goodbye. But how do you do it in this setting? How do you do it now with everything the way that it is? Well, let me offer some suggestions. If you can, make some notes. I suggest you make a lot of phone calls. Call up people on the numbers that you have, and just say a word of blessing to them. Let them know how important they have been and continue to be for you. Just make a lot of phone calls. Here's a second. Meet with people for coffee or lunch via Zoom. Not long ago, last Friday, in fact, I met one of the pastors in our town here in Batesville at a place called Blue Moon Coffee. It's a drive-in coffee place, wonderful coffee here in Batesville. And I sat in my car and he sat in his truck, and we were 6 feet apart, and we just had a good conversation about how things were going. You can do that too. Meet someone in a parking lot, get your lunch, roll down your window just a little bit, and just share a time of meeting and coffee and conversation. A third opportunity, and you may be thinking about this as well, reach out to your congregation and host several Zoom opportunities where members can sign up for conversations in small groups, kind of like that we're doing through Zoom meetings all the time. Just have people come together and have conversations in small groups. Here's an old school one. Send a letter. Send a pastoral letter out to all in your congregation, giving thanks, asking for forgiveness, offering prayers, extending blessings, and showing support for your successor. And one that's a little more new, upload a video farewell message to the congregation and then send a link to your members. You can do that in a number of different ways, YouTube being one. Just a farewell message to the church. Let them know how much you're thinking of them and how important that they are to you. So those are some things that are important in ways that we reach out: phone calls, Zoom meetings, letters, and videos. Now, because the virus dictates the future in a lot of ways, because someone had compared to making changes while flying an airplane in midstream, and COVID's kind of like that. Things change every day. So one of the things that we might be thinking about in the future is there's usually a farewell event for the pastor. Sometimes a reception, sometimes a dinner, a church dinner. If the incoming pastor approves this, why not schedule an event for the outgoing pastor at a later time after July the 1st? Want to make sure everyone is comfortable with that, but that's a good opportunity as well. You can plan a virtual farewell as well. You can plan a service on Zoom using the order of farewell to a pastor from the Book of Worship, and you can do that just like you're recording sermons each and every week. You can prepare also to share a video or a slideshow from the pastor. Now, some of these things that occurs to me are very, very helpful, and some things that you're going to be doing in connection. Some of the things that you might suggest that your church could help you do. In fact, they could do them for you. if someone says, well, how can we say goodbye? Well, that's just a good opportunity for them to help prepare a slideshow for you. Usually there's someone in the church who is the photographer who can take pictures and can put something together that you can share with a video link. And finally, a virtual way is that you might host a Zoom party with the congregation. Invite as many people as would like to come and just have a party together. You could have food and drinks at your place and just talk about how things have been over the last few years of your ministry with them. And so these are some things that that I want to highlight for you and encourage you to do. There's some more things that could happen as well. In my town, I was invited just the other day to drive by a neighbor's house who was having a birthday party. And so we all drove down the street. We met in a parking lot and we drove to her house and we wished her a happy birthday. That's a great opportunity as well. Maybe you could plan through members of your church or your committee, your staff parish, a drive-in parking lot farewell ceremony where people can drive by and wave and maybe have like a parade, something like that. A fellowship event might be possible with rotating groups of 10 with proper distancing. So that's an opportunity as well. The main thing is that saying goodbye is so important. And Ann is going to talk about this in just a minute more, the connectional nature of saying goodbye and some of those things. But if we say goodbye well, then we're able to say hello well also. Thank people for what they've done for you, not only for you, but for your family. In some situations, it's where a baby was born or where a parent died and they were there for you. Find a good way to say goodbye to them and give them a blessing. Ask for forgiveness and know that there is a time that is so important in each other's lives that you've shared things together, funeral services, weddings, baptisms, births, some wonderful memories together. Give everyone a chance to say thank you to you and say goodbye well. Again, remembering these things. Give thanks, ask for forgiveness, offer a prayer and a blessing, and support the one who is following you. And so at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Ann Ferris, who's going to talk a little more about the connectional nature of saying goodbye. Thank you.
Well, thank you, John. And like you, I'm in transition right now, transitioning from leave of absence to become the district superintendent and chief mission strategist for the Southwest District. What an amazing privilege it is to be called by God into pastoral ministry and then appointed to serve a particular charge. And when we're serving a charge, that gives us many rights and privileges to lead people in their relationship with God and to walk alongside them at the most vulnerable time in their lives. But when we leave that charge, we have to let go of our pastoral role and accept that God and the bishop have now entrusted the people in that congregation to the care of someone else. And as John said, that can be really hard to do, but not letting go can seriously undermine the ministry of the incoming pastor. Back in 2014, the Arkansas Conference Clergy Session adopted a pastoral transition covenant, which we trust you will honor at this time of transition. And if you haven't already done so, please download it from the Pastoral Transition Drive and study it carefully. The covenant states its purpose in its opening paragraph. Listen to a critical sentence. To ensure a healthy transition from the current appointed pastor to the newly appointed pastor, all must exercise great self-restraint in order to allow for a relationship where the newly appointed pastor has the best opportunity to be effective in the service of our Lord Jesus Christ. You see, it's not about us. It's about doing the best we can to prepare the way for the new pastor to be successful. So let me just remind you of a few key points from the covenant. First of all, as John said, nobody claims it's easy to leave, and especially in this COVID-19 season. But allow yourself to grieve the end of pastoral and congregational relationships. Whatever you might think about the incoming pastor, we need to demonstrate radical hospitality in welcoming that pastor and doing all we can to promote a smooth transition. Speak positively about that pastor or remain silent before and after you leave. Be careful to never undermine their ministry, and especially careful on social media. Sever pastoral ties with your previous church. Don't go back for weddings, funerals, hospital visits, or any other functions unless the new pastor initiates the invitation for you to do so. And pray for the new pastor and the congregation as they begin this new chapter in their ministry. Now, as John mentioned, there is one special case, especially if the preceding pastor just retired. You might want to consider inviting that pastor to come back for a final sermon and a retirement celebration when it's safe to do so. Now, if you're leaving a parsonage, it's very important to leave that parsonage in clean and good order, ready for the incoming pastoral family. And I invite you to download and study the Pastoral Guidelines During Pastoral Transition document. And again, I want to share a few key points about that. If you haven't already done so, it's time to work with your trustees or your parsonage committee to come up with a list of needed maintenance, repairs, biohazards that need to be resolved, furnishing to be supplied, necessary upgrades to bring the house into compliance with the annual conference parsonage standards. Check that the church has plans to do all the items under item 6 in the guidelines. Those are the responsibilities of the church, like cleaning carpets and curtains and checking the smoke detector batteries. So make sure your church has plans to do that before the new pastor moves in. And then before you move out, make sure you remove all your personal property from the house, the building, and the grounds. And if there's anything you don't plan to take with you, arrange for it to be removed before you leave. Leave the house spotlessly clean, including the appliances, closets, cabinets, bathrooms, and storage areas. If you have a pet, you may need to sanitize the house and treat it for fleas before you leave. Leave the house in the kind of condition that you hope your new parsonage will be in when you move in. And then arrange a final walkthrough with the trustees or parsonage committee and the SBRC before you leave. Have them sign off on the moving expenses form if it's in good order, or complete a damage report if it's not. And then make sure your church arranges for a COVID-19 disinfection after you leave and before the new pastor moves in. Now, the conference will generously reimburse churches up to $500 each for this work. And the reimbursement form, along with a list of recommended companies to do this, is available in the Pastors in Transition Drive. And it may be that we're going to be adding a few more companies to that list. But note that this is not a cleaning. It's a fumigation process, and it's really important that the house is clean first before this work is done, or it won't be worth doing. So leave your parsonage in good order and do all you can to facilitate a smooth transition in order to honor Jesus Christ as you prepare the way for the new pastor to be successful in their new appointment, and as you move on to focus on your new appointment. Thank you. Now I'm going to hand over to Mark.
Good morning. Greetings from the Southeast District. I want to just say that in this time of transition, not only are you dealing with change. Not only are you dealing with a global pandemic, but you need to be in the process of being well. And so today for our gathering, we've asked Reverend Dee Autry to join us to discuss how we can be well in the midst of change and in the midst of COVID-19. Dee comes to us. She is a ordained elder in Full Connection. She is a certified coach, and she works, she has been in ordained ministry for many years, been on the board of ordained ministry. She's been the dean of local pastors license school. She is going to be talking with us today about how we can be well. How do we work to keep our sense of wellness? Because change and stress is hard enough. But when we make our wholeness and our wellness a top priority, it will be able to assist us in this change. So we will be having video, and then we'll be hearing from Reverend Dee Autry. Jacob, Dee.
Hi, friends. It's great to be with you guys today and to have an opportunity to share and to certainly speak from something that matters to me tremendously. And I hope that it will be beneficial to you as well. Maybe you'll gain some insight, some motivation, encouragement. So early in my ministry, a wise pastor once said to me, every good Methodist should have 3 things in their home: a Bible, a hymnal, and a book of discipline. And I've never forgotten that. As I've journeyed this path of ministry and hopefully grown wiser in doing so, I would say now that there are 3 more things that we need, especially as a pastor. And those things are: we need a spiritual director, a coach, and a sustainable plan in our pursuit of unifying our heart, mind, body, and spirit. Some 30 years ago, when I began my ministry, I was told several times that if I didn't find time to process the losses and the conflict and the trying times, that they would rear their ugly head. And I'm certain that as a young pastor, I quickly passed that off as a whatever. But there's a lot of truth in that reality. And over the last few years, as I have made some intentional steps to take better care of myself, I can see how in not handling those challenging times of ministry, how they have played a huge role in the way that I handled many areas in my life. As I have made time for spiritual direction and working with a coach and following a plan to better care for myself, I have been overwhelmed at the harm that I have not only caused myself, but the harm that I've caused others. You see, when I am not living well in the way that I treat myself and my family and my friends, the way I even lead a congregation are all affected. When I look back and reflect, I can see so many times that those who I am called to serve weren't getting the best of me, but rather they were getting the worst of me, disguised as what I thought to be an effective and capable me. So as you move in and make this transition to a new place of ministry, you will have spent half of this last appointed year in a pandemic crisis. And that's on top of what leading a church presents without COVID-19. So things are very different. And your saying goodbye and your saying hello will not be the same. So as you pack to move, we typically go through a sorting process of what to keep and what to let go of, what is needed and what is not needed. And more than ever, I think those questions play a powerful part in how your ministry in a new setting will develop. how might you sort through the keep pile and the let go pile for not only yourself, but your family as you make this transition? And what might you keep that gives way to you being the best version of yourself? And what might you let go of that seems to hinder you? How can you begin now to build some accountability to help you make this the very best move ever? Now, every local church is having to ask the same questions. There's a lot of space for some creativity and innovative ministry to come out of all this without the burden of the unnecessary. So as you leave your current setting, how can you help the congregation to begin to ask itself these same questions? Are there things that you can help the new pastor coming by sorting through the keep and the let go pile? The truth is, it all boils down to our wellness. Wellness can be difficult to define, but I really like how it's defined in this book entitled All Shall Be Well. It's an approach to wellness by William S. Craddock, Jr., editor. It's actually a compilation of many essays written by clergy in the Episcopal Church. The specifics of wellness can vary from person to person and situation to situation. But one universal defining mark of wellness is flexibility and adaptability in both the personal and professional areas of life. Wellness also involves the willingness to know oneself, and it involves the ability to be aware of our capacity to function so as to enhance our life and the lives of those around us. It's really about having a clear set of core values, our ability to discern our vocation, to channel our passions, to set goals and achieve them, or at least work toward them. It means having the capacity to initiate and sustain and deepen our relationships. You see, wellness is reflected in our experience of satisfaction and fulfillment in many areas of our life, our personal life, family, and professional life. Now, all of that's a pretty comprehensive way of looking at wellness, but the most vital relationship, the unseen force and mover of our well-being, is our relationship with God. And at the center of our life, God calls us to this abundant life. Then that's not a life without stress or challenge, but it's a life that meets those challenges and stresses in a way that draws upon the resources of our faith in communion and community with others, which is the foundational approach to wellness. So as people in the business of all things spiritual, much of our wellness is tied up with our spirituality. And the truth is that sometimes spirituality is healthy and sometimes it is unhealthy. So another resource that I will advocate is a book entitled Emotionally Healthy Spirituality by Peter Scazzaro. I really think that every pastor should read it and then be courageous enough to share it with your congregation. So as we're living in these pandemic and then post-pandemic times, I feel it's important to consider some of the symptoms of unhealthy spirituality. These symptoms can bring havoc not only to our personal life, but they bring havoc and are present in our churches. Here's the list. Using God to run from God, ignoring anger, sadness, and fear, dying to the wrong things, denying the impact of the past on the present, dividing life into secular and sacred compartments, doing for God instead of being with God, spiritualizing away conflict, covering over brokenness, weakness, and failure, living without limits, and last, judging other people's spiritual journey. As we navigate this turbulent time, how can these symptoms become warning signs for you and what you might need to be paying attention to? Our being well people comes down to our being committed to a discipline of reflective lifestyle that gives time and space to consider 4 things that I hope you will work on. Perhaps these 4 things can serve as a guide to your reflective process in your saying goodbye and saying hello in a manner of wellness. Maybe these core values can become a basis for deeper work that you might do with a spiritual director and or a coach. The steps in this reflective process can and will guide you in your pursuit of wellness. Identity. Who and what am I right in this minute in time? With all my faults and with all my gifts. How do I understand myself, my relationships, and my responsibilities? Discernment. Who and what is God calling me to be? Practice. How am I responding to God's call? And what am I doing to be more faithful and effective? What resources are there to help me? And lastly, transformation. How am I changing and being changed by God's Spirit within me as I seek to follow a new practice and pattern of faithful ministry? Now, some of you will look at this list of 4 things and have a seemingly innate and unconscious gift by what this practice of wellness appears to simply have always been there for you. For others, it is learned and a conscious discipline to adapt to. Whatever the case, the daily application for professional and personal growth is central to a lifelong process of personal and vocational renewal. It is a discipline that we as faith leaders are called to apply to our life. Wellness demands change, and we must embrace the challenge of new ways of thinking about old truths if we are to remain vital. No doubt it is a demanding and even risky perspective, one that can easily be rejected. But the ultimate truth does not change, but its expression and relevance have to be re-articulated and made applicable to changing circumstances. Our Christian faith places high value on the practice of reflection, learning, and change. We are each called in our own way to take time to engage in such process. It's the only way that we can be sure to stay open to God's Spirit. It's the only way that we can continue to keep up with the God who moves ahead of us every day, boldly doing a new thing. So by seeking to be true to identity, discernment, practice, and transformation, it can point the way toward authentic wellness. When we add structure, accountability, and support, we will see great results. So as you move and make this transition, consider what structure, accountability, and support look like for both you and your family, in your personal life, in your professional life. How could engaging in such a process with your family make this the best move ever? And what might you keep and what might you let go? And last but not least, make time for Sabbath rest. These weeks that we have spent in quarantine have reminded us of the value of ridding ourselves of unnecessary busyness. In my own family, it has strengthened the time that we spend with one another. It has allowed simplicity to take precedence and to give ourselves space for rest. You know, there is much that we have no control of. And if we try, it only pulls us down and kind of clouds our focus on what is important. So I want to close by sharing a quote from a dear friend who left this earth much too early. And recently his wife ran across some of his writings, things that he had written down, and shared this with me. So I share it with you today. Too often we get distracted by what is outside of our control. You can't do anything about yesterday. The door to the past has been shut and the key thrown away. You can do nothing about tomorrow. It is yet to come. However, tomorrow is in large part determined by what you do today. So make today a masterpiece. You have control over that. Blessings, God's grace and mercy to you always.
Good morning. Blake Bradford here. Greetings from the Central District. I really thank Dee Dee for preparing that video for us, and we just appreciate her. I invite you to put any questions in the chat, put it to the panelists, and we'll look through that as we're going through. My time this morning is about downloading and looking at the different resources for a pastoral transition. And so you all received a link for the Arkansas website for pastors in transition, and it has several different items offered to you. The first item I wanted to bring up, and if Jacob, you could throw that on the screen, I'd appreciate it, is the critical conversations question. And what you'll see on that is it's a question bank. And it's designed originally for a transition conversation between the current and incoming pastor. But we are learning more and more that transitions are not a light switch you turn on and off. It's a process. So several of the questions are also extremely useful for staff parish committees and even our ad boards or trustees or other groups to have conversations with you as you're learning more about the congregation and being in an intentional process. Again, it's a question bank. It's a multi-page document. It would be hard for most folks to swallow it in whole. So it's really designed to you can hand it out, you can distribute it. Not every question is helpful for every group. So choose what's the most important for each population. Some may be for your prep time with your current pastor. Some questions may stretch over the next several months with lay leadership. There's different sections on ministries, communications, worship practices, so you don't get surprised by that tradition that it happens every year, finances, structure and staffing and how decisions are made, relationship building, and there's also a new page-long section dedicated to transition during the COVID-19 season. And let me give a couple of examples of questions there. And so one example, and Jacob, you'll pop that up on the screen. One of the questions is, the pause to in-person ministries offers an opportunity for reflection as assessment. What ministries, events, or ministry teams will need to be discontinued permanently post-COVID? We put that question there because, I mean, if you think about it, this crisis is also an opportunity for churches to think about its purpose. Wouldn't it be a shame for folks to restart a ministry in the late summer or fall that was really just sucking resources and not showing any fruit? And since the incoming pastor was not there and can't assess the ministry, we're going to need to be really intentional about sharing those experiences. Here's another question that you can use. Yeah, there you go. What ministries and leaders thrived during the quarantine period? This pandemic has truly made us all aware intensely of the local. By having to adapt, your new congregation may have learned something that they didn't know about their mission field by discovering what has thrived during this time. And that might be a ministry that needs some more energy and resources, while some other ministries maybe need to be let go. And so those are some of the critical questions that you can get information from the current pastor and from different committees over the season of transition and over the next several months as you move toward the fall. The idea here is to use this as an intentional relationship building and information gaining. There's also a downloadable checklist for transitions. Now, this is a pretty, it says it's not exhaustive, but it's a pretty exhaustive list. And it includes requesting things such as documents, passwords. Think of how many passwords we have just over the past 2 months for different social media and Zoom and all that the church has. Financial information about the church, giving information. Some information like giving information may have changed dramatically over the past couple of months. You're going to need to have that at hand as you approach this next season. This checklist is a tool designed to share with others to make requesting materials easier. I know that sometimes when we try to get information, it feels like a lot to ask, and folks aren't sure what to share. By having this checklist, it's really easy to just share the checklist, say, I'm really needing under the finance section, number 1, 2, and 3. It normalizes this transition we're going through. It also normalizes the idea that there is a handoff time. And again, like the critical questions, there is a new section dedicated to documents and information that you're going to need shared with you related to the COVID-19 season. I'll give you some examples, such as the CARES Act documents. For example, you'll need to see if the church did a payroll protection loan and see the requirements and see how that money's being used, because it'll either be forgiven or need to be paid back while this transition's happening. So you'll want to have that in hand. Also, you may arrive right when the church is thinking about relaunching in-person worship. You're going to need to be able to see the headline, the health guidelines the church is coming up with. Pastors, here's what I'll say about that. These are suggestions. Not every document will be needed for every church, and you may have particular documents that you'll need that are not on the list. Please work with the incoming lay leadership, but also your current lay leadership. In other words, with your current lay leadership, work with them to provide the documents such as these for your successor. I know many pastors prepare a notebook for the church and the parsonage to prepare the ground for their successor. I've always been thankful when I didn't even have to ask for documents. One of my best moves, actually, I was following John Fleming, and he had everything ready to go for me. He had tons of information. So when I walked in the door, I didn't even have to ask. He just had it ready. They just showed up. Keys, everything was all laid out. That's the kind of great hospitality for the next pastor that you can prepare right now. And another document you'll see on there is the SPRC annual timeline. And with that, this goes from July to June. It recommends topics for 12 months of SPRC meetings. It includes reminders of required reports, and use this tool to encourage healthy relationships while staying focused on the disciple-making mission. One of the things I heard from retired DS Rodney Steele my first month on the cabinet was, in every situation where DS intervention had to happen because of a problem, when he asked, have the pastor and SPRC been meeting monthly? The answer was, every time there was a problem, well, we didn't see the need, things were going fine. you don't need to meet because there's a problem. You need to meet so that stuff doesn't become problems. And that takes relational trust, and relational trust takes time and meeting together. So each of your staff parish chairs have already received a copy of this timeline. That came with your appointment letter. We hope that this tool provides some space and some opportunity for you and the staff parish to deeply focus on your congregation's purpose and mission, and also your fruitfulness. Now, the last item I want to share is about parsonage matters, and Ann already touched on most of this. I just want to tell you that there's these things that you can download. First of all, there's guidelines during a transition. This lays out expectations for who's responsible for what. It's a conference policy. There's a parsonage walkthrough and damage report. There's the Arkansas Conference parsonage standards. We just copied and pasted that directly from the journal. And there's information Ann referred to earlier about the disinfection reimbursement information. And that will consistently be updated as new information is gained, but that's to help churches with parsonages. So the idea between all this is to intentionally share resources with church leaders. I want you to know that the website that we have, and you can click to the next one, Jacob, even this week, we've added more items to the transition webpage. Recently, I think just even this week, there was a newly released Lewis Center supplement for transitions. It was a great document. We said, just let's add it in. It might be really helpful. It's a tool that you could give your current church, and it's a tool you can give your next church in addition to these other resources, just tools to help the process. The final resource is not downloadable. It's very personal. And that's your appointment letter. You should have received that from your superintendent, your incoming superintendent. This letter is a conversation and expectation setting tool with staff parishes and pastors. It's designed to keep the DS in the loop. Of course, we know that expectations will need to be adjusted due to context. Every one of us have landed in a church and things weren't exactly what we expected. And sometimes it's great and sometimes it's challenging. But we know that there's context issues, there's changing ministry needs, there's COVID-related changes, but the letter is the basis for conversation and set those expectations. It gives some basic groundwork and language to share as the next phase is figured out. I encourage you to not keep all these resources to yourself, but to share them. Let's make this more of a team journey, not a solo expedition. And now we're going to go into a break time. You have all received a second login. I sent that email out again this morning. The next part is interactive, so you'll be on video with sound coming up soon. So do whatever you need to for that. It'll start with an equipping component, and then we'll break into groups and share our transition plans. But right now, we're going to be going on to break. Thank you very much, and for joining us for the first session. God bless.